Okay, in the last 12 years I've been driving truck, I have gradually seen conditions get worse and worse when it comes to these new and inexperienced drivers going out on the road, and some of them can't even speak fluent English. But now I'm starting to see stuff that's even worse. The kids that are getting their licenses in record time, by the way, which is like really short, like less than 3 weeks. They're getting thrown into these situations now that are considered very dangerous. And on this episode of Truckin It, we need to address several government agencies and several training organizations to get their heads right. In light of the pileups that have been happening in Texas since Wednesday, many of these drivers coming into the business are being cocky, being stupid, and failing to heed the warnings that were issued by the National Weather Service, by the state government, in the form of a disaster declaration that clearly had the word "stay off the roads" in it, and by local officials who have the signs up on the message boards through the Department of Transportation. Okay? It ain't just a watch for plows situation this time. Drivers were told to stay off the roads. By wireless emergency alert, by NOAA weather radio, and by alerts on their GPS and ELD devices. So why in the hell were these guys out there? I want to ask that question coming up. Okay, so let me start off with this. You were told not to drive. Governor Abbott put it right in his executive order when this winter storm warning came out that driving is strongly discouraged by all vehicles, and that you should not drive unless you're having an emergency and have no other way to get help. It is that simple. So, I want to start off with the question of why. Why were you out on the roads? I've got 1.8 million miles of experience over the course of 12 years. At the rate of about 125,000 miles a year, give or take. To 150,000 miles a year, roughly. I'm doing on average between 500 and 700 miles a day. On most days. And I'm going to tell you right now that your decision, and I know that there's plenty of 20-year guys and 30-year guys out here who say, "Oh, we've seen it all and we'll just continue being super truckers." I want you to think about your actions here. Are you going to kill the life of an innocent motorist or yourself because you chose to ignore the warnings? You were told to park it by the governor himself on Friday. You were told to park it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. Now, with all the crashes and stuff that are occurring, Texas is going to need some serious federal help in order to get this crisis resolved. The governor's executive order has already gone to Joe Biden's desk out there in Washington, D.C., and Joe Biden's already signed this order. So, very soon here, we should be seeing help on the way once the storm passes to get the crashes cleaned up, everything investigated, and get some decisive action on what needs to be done. And a lot of it goes on you as a truck driver. As one of my fellow brothers, you need to stand up for yourself to these big companies that are trying to force you to drive. Because I know the crash lawyers are doing the same. And by the crash lawyers, I mean places like Jim Adler and Associates, and that dude in Houston that sued Werner for $90 million. Just to name two of them. And if you don't believe me, you can look all this stuff up. Because we've got to change the industry. And that starts with training. Not just online and computer-based training either. We need drivers to be, for their recurrent winter driving training, they need to be in a physical classroom. They need to have simulators, anything to train them on how to handle emergencies in a big truck. Because training and experience are the only way that you gain something called common sense, which a lot of these new drivers are lacking. Experience and training make the difference between a driver who knows when to shut it down and a driver who keeps on trucking in a winter storm that's making the roads very dangerous and causes a deadly pileup or crash. And the actions of my fellow drivers, and I'm sorry to be in this industry if that's the case, need to be more like airline pilots and less like what they are now. Because you have authority over your truck in this case. And this authority needs to be demonstrated, and it needs to be practiced. And when you're told about warnings, and when you're being told there's executive orders telling you that we can't handle this and that you need to shut it down, your company needs to get the memo. And I'm dead serious about that. They should be using trained and seasoned meteorologists on staff if you're working for a mega carrier who would have known this was coming and passed the alert on. If you're not working for a mega carrier and you're working for a mom and pop operation, you need to make it clear to the company owner. And if you're an owner-operator, you need to make it clear to your customers, to your load board, everything. Because without safe drivers, the trucking industry stops. It's that simple. And based off what I've seen with all these crashes that keep occurring, whether they be pileups or not, the one thing that could have prevented them was the driver's decision to stay off the roads. Now, here's one easy way to get these drivers off the roads for those of y'all at Texas Department of Transportation. And I will gladly share this. In some of the other states I've driven, they actually have physical gates that can be closed by DOT employees on the access ramps to their interstate highways. So when winter weather is occurring, they just close these gates and they force everyone off the road. It couldn't be simpler. And for other highways, message boards need to be used as much as possible. And same goes for interstates, of course. And if you're in a major metro area like Fort Worth, for example, those message boards were being used quite often. And yes, NTTA did make a mistake on Wednesday by not having their lanes closed. they should have closed their express lanes. So, TxDOT and NTTA, I know you dropped the ball on Wednesday, but you definitely made up for it with this storm. And I need you, as a professional driver, I advise you to continue monitoring weather conditions and shutting down roads as necessary. And of course, if that's the decision of local officials, those local officials need to get their heads out of their behinds and close roads and show that they have the balls to do it. And finally, for you fellow truck drivers, this is what I'm trying to tell you. Training has become so woefully inadequate that we need to start standing up and fighting. We need to get with the FMCSA. We need to tell them as it is. And we need to get these training standards updated so that drivers get more training and more experience before they get behind the wheel of a big truck. And that they have proper recurring training, including classes, as well as online learning, so that they can learn how to safely handle their rigs in times of inclement weather. Because training and experience make all the difference in the world. And lastly, there should be something on the federal regulations that requires a specific level of experience for you to become a trainer. And if it's not on the federal books, these companies need to voluntarily start implementing it. Get million milers like myself and others. Those guys who have at least 1 million miles under their belt into situations where they can train a driver on how to safely operate and handle a truck. Because the guys with experience like myself and those other million milers, and the attitude of a teacher, by the way, we need that too, should be what's being taught in the classrooms and on the road. And if you're a bonehead super trucker, okay, here's some advice for you as well. There comes a point where, in your career, where you need to hang up the keys. And some of y'all are involuntarily hanging up the keys by crashing into other vehicles today. For the rest of y'all who have not chosen to drive safely, to think that you can do 68 miles an hour in conditions where you should only be doing half that speed, I strictly condemn your actions. And we will need to discuss going forward what you need to learn about winter driving before things get serious again. Because what your daddy taught you or what your friend taught you is wrong. I'm Zach Bell. This is Truckin It. Please, if you're in Texas, stay off the roads until Thursday. Stay at the truck stop, stay at the rest areas, stay at anywhere else where you are parked and safe. Unless conditions improve. Let's make your best trip your next and your safest trip. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep on trucking safely. Bye for now.